Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Faster Way podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by my friend, Dr. Anna Cabeca, the girlfriend doctor. Dr. Anna, we've had you on the podcast before, but it's been a little while. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh, always I was so looking forward to our call today. I'm like, I get to catch up with Amanda.
Oh, you're awesome. And anytime I'm in Dallas, Texas, I text you and I say, "Can we get together?" I love being able to see you. Last time I saw you, you brought your grandbaby as well, and she is just absolutely perfect. So loved catching up. Let's talk a little bit about your story. You've been on the podcast before, but for those who are new to Faster Way, I want them to hear first and foremost, when and why you entered into the wellness industry. And then I'm going to ask some very targeted questions because I do happen to know your background and I believe it'll be inspirational to my ladies, specifically my ladies listening.
Absolutely. Well, I've always been fascinated with healthcare, right? I wanted to be a physician from 6 years old. And then I realized when I was 16 that so much was of women's healthcare was based on research done on men. And I said, that's unacceptable. So that led me to pursue a career as a gynecologist and obstetrician. And I trained at Emory University in Atlanta, I think one of the best institutions for OBGYN in the world. And yet I came out of there with a doctor's bag that was essentially empty, really empty to get to the root cause, to address the underlying issues. It was great with a prescription pad and a surgical knife, but addressing those underlying root issues were still like that was still a journey and an education. And then my own journey, my own story led me really into my own healing journey around the world, working with alternative or integrative or traditional healers from different disciplines and really, change the trajectory of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your own personal journey and how that did take you from a more traditional Western medicine background and perspective to this integrative, more functional leaning perspective.
Yes. So when I was 39 years old, post-traumatically, I was diagnosed with infertility and went through 6 rounds. And I'd had two children. I had a daughter that was 6 and a daughter that was 9 at the time. And I'd been diagnosed post-traumatically with infertility and went through 6 rounds of infertility treatment. So anyone listening who's gone through infertility treatment, it's like loss after loss after loss.
Mm.
And then plunged right into early menopause at 39 years old.
Mm.
Told I would never have another child. And heartbroken and grieving, I took a sabbatical from my medical practice in Southeast Georgia and literally traveled around the world. And as a result of that journey, I mean, I went in Peru and I learned about indigenous healing herbs like maca and cat's claw herb and then to Brazil and then to Asia and Australia and different places I met indigenous healers and it really changed my perspective. But not only that, Amanda, I went from being diagnosed with early menopause at 39, like irreversible at that stage, right? Irreversible. In my mind, as an OBGYN, that diagnosis is like written in stone. But as a result of what I learned and the healing foods that I started experiencing along the way, then and the grace of God, my early menopause diagnosis was reversed. And then I naturally conceived the child I was told I would never be able to have when I was 41 years old. And so that lit me up on fire to go back into medicine and practice from a really integrative and root cause approach to healing our body and telling women your diagnosis is not your destiny. Our body is incredible and it has the ability to heal given the right nutrients, the right mindset, the lifestyle shifts that we have to make. I mean, it's so much more powerful than anything I can write on a prescription pad or do with a surgical knife.
Mm.
So that was, that really changed me. And I will tell you, I just was, well, part of our healing journey, I was in Bali, Indonesia, and that was 18 years ago. And I just came back from Bali 2 weeks ago. And it was really interesting perspective because 18 years ago, and to be there now and look back at where I was 18 years ago, I was broken. I was infertile, early menopause. I was so depressed. And now to be there and see how far I've come. My daughter's 17, she barrel races, so she's in the rodeo. I haul horses, I drive a big old dude truck and pull a horse trailer, and I'm 59 and like living my best life and really in best relationships and best health. And there's always that fork in the road, right? I mean, every day we have that choice. Do we move towards health or do we move towards disease?
Mm.
And that it was just so pivotal to see, to be in a place where I was 18 years ago and realize that, how much has shifted. And that Indonesian trip, that trip to Bali, Ubud, was pivotal in my healing journey because I met with this indigenous healer there. His name was Patak, and met outside in his courtyard. My girls were with me and my husband at the time, and so we sat there, and he's this native traditional medicine man and from generations and generations of healers. And I said, I'm infertile, early menopause. And he put his hand on my head, Amanda. And I remember it being so tender. I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Like, so for everyone listening, you can put your hand on your head. And if there's a tender spot, I'm going to tell you what he told me. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, is it a tumor? What's going on? And he says, your ovaries are fine. You worry too much.
Oh, interesting. I just got
So
chills.
yes, the effects of stress, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm a OBGYN. Like, I know my ovaries aren't fine. I saw shriveled up almonds on my ultrasounds. I know my lab numbers, like I am early menopause, haven't had a period. Body was in such shock and from trauma and PTSD and grief and
Mm.
all of those effects, and not to mention most likely the high chemicals used from the infertility treatments too. But I was in that fear, worry. No kidding, I was worried. I was fearful. I was stressed to the max. And that activates your HPA axis. It shuts down your ovaries. But a few months later, I was pregnant.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I was going to ask the symptoms you were experiencing to confirm that you were in menopause, but you said it, you had lost your period. So that's your surefire sign. And then you took it a step further and did an ultrasound. What did your blood work look like at that time?
Yeah, FSH was elevated. Estrogen was in the pits. DHEA was 17. DHEA
Mm.
sulfate was 17. It should be
Wow.
200, right? At least 150. And so our hormone, the estrogen and testosterone derived from DHEA. Progesterone was in the single digits. It was like one or two on day 21, which is what we like to look at progesterone level day 19 to 21. And so, that was it to my medical mind. That meant, you know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it, early menopause.
Wow. Wow. And you reversed that. You,
For the grace of
by
God,
the
God's
grace of
hand in it
God.
every step of the way.
Absolutely. You conceived a baby. So you had her at 41 or did you have her at 42?
I had her at almost 42. So she was born
Okay.
in February, I turned 42. So my 42nd year around the sun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then share with me the journey after that. Did you quickly then kind of journey into perimenopause or was it still a number of years after that?
So then, so from there, it was pretty consistent. I came back on fire, full swing
Mhm.
into my practice, but PTSD was still under the surface.
Mm.
Like I still had, the effects of trauma. And then at 48, I was full blown perimenopause again, like all the symptoms, the anxiety. I was still sleeping 3 hours a night, and mood swings, brain fog, memory loss. I closed my medical practice because I was burnt out and I knew I had to put God and family first. And so I was taking care of them, and I was investing in creating my product Julva because my patients were like, no one will give us your creams, lotions, and potions. So I'm like, well, let me create something over the counter that is better than anything I can write on a prescription pad. So that's how I created my intimate cream called Julva, and I had my product from superfoods around the world, Mighty Maca. So I was working on these, doing, my hormones were dialed in. I'm a hormone expert, so my hormones were dialed in. And in that perimenopause at 48, weight gain without doing anything different, the hair loss, the fatigue, the brain fog, the mood swings. And I knew that it takes more than hormones to fix your hormones. So that's when I delved in. I create what I call my magic menopause method and my Keto-Green plan and shifted my nutrition focused on the alkalinity and getting into ketosis in a healthy way, which is so critically important for women.
Mhm.
And that changed my physiology. And then I finally went through menopause. That cleared me up literally in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I had clarity, I had focus, I had, like this, peace that surpasses all understanding, as it says in the Bible.
Yeah.
I experienced that because nothing in my external world had changed. I was still at that point a single mom, raising a wee one in elementary school, two teenage girls, and I was, nothing there had changed, but internally, my physiology shifted and created a more positive magnetism. And I've since wrote 3 books, right? Published 3 best-selling books, and created my online program, Magic Menopause, as a result of this. And finally, age 56, went through menopause officially.
Got it. Oof, it's so encouraging to those of us listening because many of my faster weight clients and myself are experiencing some of those symptoms. You had, difficulty sleeping, you had the mood swings, you mentioned the brain fog. These are very real symptoms that so many women are looking for relief around. And I think that was an interesting phrase where you said, you need more than hormones to fix your hormones. So we are going to talk very, very tactically now about these different items. Talk with me about, and I'm going to start trying it, your maca, your mighty maca. I think that's a really unique um, ingredient that I've been hearing more and more about. So can you share the details?
Yeah, so when I was in Peru as part of that healing journey, when you're tired, they say drink some maca. When you're infertile, they say drink maca. And then they're like, "Oh, it's the Peruvian Viagra." I'm like, "Okay, give me maca." I'm like, and it's actually maca has unique proteins. Peruvian maca has unique proteins, not to be confused with Chinese maca. But Peruvian maca is also rich in arginine, which increases nitric oxide, all 3 forms of nitric oxide, which increases blood flow, which is how Viagra works. And so, like this traditional medicine, has these like medicinal values. And for me, being from a family of chefs and gourmands and gastronomiques, I was like, oh, I can't stand the taste, but if maca is good, what else do you have? And every culture I went to, I asked them, what have they been using as healing foods and, medicinal foods, medicinal herbs and ingredients. And so I started incorporating these other 30 key ingredients like cat's claw herb, which is a potent anti-inflammatory and
Mm.
immune stimulant. So it's really supportive of our immune systems, especially for women. We struggle with autoimmune diseases. And then acerola cherry, which has 10 times as much vitamin C. It says so many good polyphenols. And then continuing on the journey, the greens, the fibers, the enzymes, the turmeric, and then science-based ingredients I included, like quercetin or resveratrol. So good for our body. And when we can support our hormone detox and support our body's natural production of hormones, clearing up the receptor sites, our body makes and uses what we're naturally designed to do better. So Mighty Maca Plus was born, and I started using it in my own life and in my own medical practice, and heard so many good stories. Lots of, I call them Mighty Maca babies, improvements in fertility, decrease in hot flashes. My breast cancer patients were able to use this and get rid of their hot flashes. And energy, adrenal support, alkalinization. So it's a mighty maca with a good blend of greens and antioxidants and polyphenols, which in combination work tremendously well. And we see an improvement in our adrenal function. We see an improvement in DHEAS in the blood by 70 to 200% in just 2 to 3 months, taking 2 to 3 scoops a day. So that's better than any adrenal protocol I can give you out there. So
Wow.
that was really powerful and was really interesting to learn. Okay, when we think about these foods and herbs and spices in our cooking, these are all medicinal and food. And so, food is medicine. It can be health promoting or disease promoting. And so I worked to create medicinal menus that incorporated the best. And you were telling me about your Halloween, so high quality protein, high quality fat, and low carbohydrate, alkalinizing greens and ingredients that are rich in these nutrients and fiber to help with our hormones. And it's a combination that works really well.
Yeah. So you mentioned DHEA. I personally am pretty familiar with estrogen, estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, but tell me a little bit more about DHEA. And you said the Mighty Maca helps to increase that DHEA.
Yeah, it's adaptogenic. So if it's too high, it will keep it, in a healthy range.
Okay.
For those of us with PCOS, and now I have a history of PCOS classic, right? Hot,
Yep.
strong family history of diabetes and cardiovascular disease and weight gain and those, and acne and all of those things as a classic PCOS. And so, we usually run a high DHEAS.
Yes.
But again, mine was like down into the teens post-traumatically. Stress depletes it. And because when we think of our mother hormones, our mother hormones, progesterone and pregnenolone, are derived from cholesterol. And we need healthy levels of cholesterol. We do not want to suppress a woman's cholesterol too much. If it's too high, we ask why, right? And address the underlying reasons because we need it to make progesterone and pregnenolone. From there, we make either shift to cortisol or DHEAS. And from DHEAS or DHEA, we make testosterone and estrogen. So we need healthy levels of adrenal hormones, especially perimenopause and beyond, to make healthy levels of testosterone and estrogen. And many people get misdiagnosed in perimenopause as estrogen dominant because of those symptoms. It's really because of progesterone insufficiency.
Mm.
So that ratio shifts because we lose 75% of our progesterone, our ovarian production of progesterone from age 35 to 55. 75%. So that's significant. We lose 35% of our estrogen. So that rapid shift, can show up as those irregular periods, that breakthrough bleeding, that heavier than normal period, the PMS symptoms. And I always tell my clients, if you only hate your partner 2 weeks out of the month, it's your hormones, not necessarily your partner. Physiology affects our behavior. And it's that this progesterone and pregnenolone are neuroprotective. So when we think of these symptoms in perimenopause, there's a lot of neurologic symptoms, the anxiety, the insomnia, and those are two key areas that we need progesterone to maintain the precursors to make serotonin, which is our anti-anxiety neurotransmitter. And from serotonin, we make melatonin, which is our sleep neurotransmitter. So doing everything to optimize these two key, you know, neuroendocrine hormones are key. And we do it from a functional perspective. We want to improve our body's ability to make it. We do all the lifestyle hacks so that we're not interfering with our melatonin production at night. And we need the tryptophan to make serotonin. When we start losing that progesterone helps maintain tryptophan. Without it, we get increased breakdown of tryptophan, increased degradation of tryptophan. So if you think from tryptophan, we make 5-HTP to serotonin to melatonin, that cascade. And what happens in perimenopause? Anxiety and difficulty sleeping. Those are two of the first symptoms patients experience that lead them usually to an SSRI and a sleep
Mhm.
medication.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, girl, you are describing my life right now. So it's interesting because I'm 39, which, you were 39 when you were diagnosed in menopause. I told you right before we started the chat, I have a history of PCOS. All my listeners know that. The past 2 years, I've had the most regular cycles I've ever had in my life, which is what's so interesting that I'm, like, experiencing these insomnia flares right now. It came on even worse after I did this parasite detox and a liver flush, which I don't think my body was, like, quite ready for. But I also seem to have a histamine intolerance. I've been on Pepcid. My dad was on Pepcid. My grandma was on Pepcid for, like, their whole life, and I was texting my dad last night. I'm like, "You said all these bad things my way." He's like, "I know. My grandma had insomnia. My dad has insomnia. It's just all the same things, but it's kind of like maybe manifesting just slightly different since I'm a female, my dad's a male." But it's so interesting what you're saying because when I've gotten my blood work done here recently, what's so confusing is last month I had a doctor tell me all of my hormones were high. He's like, your testosterone's high, your estradiol's high, your progesterone's high, everything's high. And then I had someone else tell me my estrogen, which was 221 right at ovulation, was like low. And then I had someone else tell me it was fine. And if I do supplement with progesterone, which I have for years for sleep, it wouldn't impact my serum blood level of progesterone. Like, it's just, Dr. Anna, so confusing. It's so
This
confusing.
is where we have to look at the timeline. First of all, when we test, and this is something I have a whole testing module in my Magic Menopause program because I want my patients to know when they're given a test to test their hormones, what has to be done when, especially when you're premenopausal or perimenopausal. So, cycle day 2 is when we want to look at an FSH, LH, estradiol, and AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone, to look at your ovarian reserve. So, it's a good idea to just look at that cycle day 2.
Okay.
FSH is really important because it starts to creep up over 15. We know there's ovarian resistance. Over 40, it's menopause, right? And so FSH is also elevated with histamine and MCAS intolerance. So this
Yep.
I found recently in following some of my patients very closely who have MCAS and dialing in their hormones and getting all this situated. Then all of a sudden they have a flare and their FSH goes up over 100 when their hormones are even better and and higher values. So it should
Right.
be the opposite should be true with FSH. We want to really get it below 40, below 20 for bone health and brain health. But many things will lower the FSH and many things increase the FSH. So looking at that cycle day 2, that's when we want to look at that FSH and estradiol.
Okay.
In cycle day 21, we want to look at progesterone. And we can look at estradiol again there, but FSH and LH aren't really going to help us there necessarily. But I don't mind if we look at them, it gives us a perspective. But really want to look at that day 19 to 21 progesterone level. And we will see progesterone. Now, if you're on progesterone during this time, we'll be looking, we will see progesterone, not progestins. We will see progesterone in your blood. So usually like the first time you do it that we're off any meds, and you can't test hormones on birth control pills. They're just
Right.
inaccurate.
Yep.
So so we would look at it without the progesterone, and then the following month look at it with the progesterone to make sure you're on optimum. And then we can figure out what's optimum for you, oral progesterone or vaginal progesterone, transdermal progesterone. Troches are another way to use it. There's different ways we as prescribers can optimize your progesterone level, but also want to improve your adrenal function so your body's producing more of that progesterone as well. And by everything we do to optimize adrenal function, like for the mighty maca, the oxytocin increasing over cortisol, right? We want to increase oxytocin over cortisol. So mindset, lifestyle practices, all of those things. Oxytocin is the most powerful hormone in our body. And so everything we can do to improve that makes a huge difference in our physiology overall. And so we look at those few things, and that can really help give us perspective. And one cycle, especially in perimenopause, isn't a determinant, right? We need to look at it over a couple, 2, 3 cycles, really before, we're giving any information. Like I always say, your diagnosis is not your destiny. And we love to diagnose in medicine. We give you call things syndromes and diagnose. I mean, menopause is now a disease state. Wait, what happened here? Puberty is
Oof.
not. Why is menopause? Like that's crazy. So we
Yeah.
want to look at this and just optimize our body. Menopause is natural and mandatory, suffering's optional. So we heal the physiology, the symptoms go away.
That was a really interesting phrase. You said menopause is,
Natural and mandatory, suffering is optional.
that is great.
Yes.
That
And I
is
know
great,
that,
great, great.
yeah, and I know that for myself. And this is where, again, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. We think of our reproductive hormones as very important, but there are, these lever pulling hormones, and that's adrenaline. So that's our foot on the gas pedal, cortisol, and insulin. And as we age, cortisol and insulin increase while our reproductive hormones are decreasing. So, really resetting our circadian rhythm,
Hmm.
like light biology and adrenal support, is imperative, and becoming more insulin sensitive. So, for example, with intermittent fasting, no
Hmm.
snacking, reducing carbs, is critical to help with insulin sensitivity. And the most powerful, overarching, the queen mother of hormones, if you will, is oxytocin. And so when
Mm.
we empower oxytocin, all the other hormones play better, right? They play better. And oxytocin, the research on it is continuing and up and coming, but we know it's the most alkalinizing hormone. It's a rebuilding hormone. It supports your immune system. And we make all these hormones in our body. So empowering our body to make these hormones better makes a difference. And for me, I no longer talk about stress management. I talk about increasing oxytocin. So
I
it's a
love
much
that.
better shift and mindset.
That is so great. I really, really love that. Do you know much about the link between perimenopause, menopause, and this histamine intolerance, which I'm now starting to learn so much? And I know this is like, you're not going to want to hear this as a doctor, but I'll put all of my data and things into ChatGPT, and I'm, like, constantly just like, "Here's what I took for supplements. Here's how I slept. Here I'm, like, congested today. I ate this. I'm congested. I'm da da da. I'm congested." And ChatGPT over the weekend is like, "I know the problem. You need, like, to address the histamine intolerance." And it was, like, yelling at me, like, shouting at me. It's like, "Histamine intolerance, da 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 da." I'm like, okay, I hear you." But do you know much about that and kind of how it's all linked together?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think like, there are very few experts in this place when it comes to hormones. Tanya Dempsey is an expert in this space with histamine intolerance. She's been deep in it and MCAS,
Yes.
mast cell activation syndrome. And I've had many conversations with her as well as digging in because I have some complicated patients that have this histamine intolerance. So I watch how that affects their hormones, their bone loss, osteopenia, osteoporosis in their 40s. And so we have to address it. And there's so much with histamine intolerance now more than ever. And I think it's that layering effect, right? It's that layering effect that, the rub from, the endocrine disruptors, the inflammatory um, toxins in our environment, and certainly our digestive health. And when it comes down to it, the gut is like, I can't fix someone's hormones without fixing their gut.
Yeah.
This is the critical, and that's why medicinal foods are important and supplementation is important. Natural anti-inflammatories are very beneficial that can help. And looking at food triggers for sure, but again, what caused that histamine intolerance? And when we have more of that estrogen dominance because of progesterone insufficiency, we can see that surge in histamine intolerance too. So this
Mm,
becomes that really critical time period to address these
interesting.
issues.
Interesting. So estrogen dominance, which I know I've had just, being someone with PCOS, that can actually be part of the histamine intolerance. Interesting.
And post-COVID, whether it's infection or injection, we definitely seeing a more challenging, like in the two clients that are um, really struggling with this are long COVID patients.
Mm, wow. Wow,
So,
wow,
but
wow.
addressing the gut becomes, the ground zero.
Yeah, and I know I have gut issues this year because every stool is loose this year, and the only time that I had normal stools, I'm like TMI on the podcast here, was right after I did the parasite detox and then did a colonic, and I had, like, a few days that were amazing, and then I did this stupid liver flush, and just it's all gone downhill, but I'm like, I can draw a line. There's a correlation of, like, my gut and my sleep, my gut and my just overall function, and this I'm like, "What is going on with my gut?" I'm like, "I've never had the issues that I've had this year, like the gut issues." So I'm like, "What do I do about that?" Anna, it's so overwhelming. I'm like, part of me is like, I just wanna unsubscribe from all of it and just go live in Costa Rica and just have no stress in my I feel like if I had no stress in my life, it would just all be fine too.
Well, and I think it's, no matter what stress we're living in, if we can, and this comes with a gentle approach because I know what it feels like to be really, really stressed, to have PTSD, to, be depressed and it's not like, but creating these oxytocin increasing practices are critical. So, for example, I'll some prescribe my Big Fat Greek Wedding. I mean, that is an oxytocin producing film, right? Because you laugh, it's funny, especially if you're a first generation like me, you completely relate. And but what increases laughter, what increases joy, what if you focus on those things as opposed to stress management, if you focus on the things you love with the people you love doing them with, you're increasing oxytocin. When you create, like we talk about exercise snacks during the day, right? You talk about micro workouts and exercise snacks. We need to make oxytocin snacks, play snacks throughout the day. What brings us fun, putting on the music that we enjoy. And focusing on those things, a prayer, gratitude, staying grateful in the moment, even when you feel like there's nothing to be grateful for, is good medicine. It's really good
Mm.
medicine. Giving of your time, tithes, and talents, right? It says in the Bible, giving of your time, tithes, and talents. It's an oxytocin increasing. So it creates a shift in our physiology that's very healing. Now, I want to touch base on your parasite cleanse and your liver flush
Yes.
because you're focused on your liver, and our hormones, especially estrogen, is detoxified in the liver via the P450 enzyme pathways. And so they're a little bit overburdened there. And then the looser stools means there's that, leaky gut type. And what happens is cortisol creates those leaky membranes. And so leaky brain, leaky heart vessels, leaky gut, intestinal mucosa, it's like it opens, like it puts, breaks down the good, healthy boundaries of our cells. And my perspective is always, how can we get healthier cell function, healthier cell-to-cell communication, just in the micro, like we should be doing in the macro with being a good neighbor, a good friend, all of those things, like having healthy cell-to-cell communication is key for life and vitality. And so healing those cell membranes and healing that gut. So, thinking, okay, well, what's your targeted nutrition plan to rebalance the estrobolome in your GI tract? Because also we make more serotonin in our GI tract than we do. And we need serotonin to make melatonin so you can get a good night's sleep. So addressing the gut and phosphatidylcholine, probiotics, those are, and postbiotics like butyrate are, you know, would be first line, like really working on those can help. And the butyrate can help with those loose stools too.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about how you work with a patient because I have a lot of ladies listening. Some might live in Texas. Actually, many of our clients live in Texas. Some might be able to either like use some of the advice as they're working with their doctor in their own town or fly and work with you. So walk me through. You like to do blood work over a series of months and what are the other steps?
Yeah, so definitely I tell clients at least join my free 10-day Breeze Through Menopause program, whether you're before, during, or after menopause, because that's snippets and foundational. You get my medicinal menus, you get my core philosophy, and these snippets of what I've talked about in short daily videos. So Breeze Through Menopause, free to go through for 10 days. My Magic Menopause program is 8 weeks. I like my patients to have gone through my Magic Menopause program before they come to see me because there's so much foundation. It's an 8 week program, but there's so much foundation in that. And typically, like I see patients in person here in Dallas. I only see patients 1 to 2 days a week. And I typically will start either in person within the first 2 visits in person, and we can follow up virtual or start with a virtual and let's order all the labs that we need and then follow up in person because I do a full head to toe executive physical. And I think that I'm a better doctor because of it. And so we'll look at labs over time too. And as a longevity specialist, I'm always looking, what are you at risk of getting in the future? And how do we, deviate from that? How do we stay on the path towards healthy longevity and healthy lifespan and sex span, right? Sexual health is optimal health. And so, how we create that over time. And, it's a process, but the foundations are there that are in my online programs. And that's a great way to start. And my book, The Hormone Fix,
Yes.
mandatory reading. It's good for men to read too. They understand, especially like I always hear from guys when they read that book, thank you, because now I understand what my partner is going through or went through. And I can really be supportive and helpful because it's not just about the diet, the lifestyle piece, understanding the sleep, understanding the sexual health piece, understanding hormone disruptors. That's key. Plus, when to test and what to look for. Many
Mm.
times, our physicians don't know about these functional tests or also the timing of testing. And that's very important.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that there is more focus being put on these stages of perimenopause and menopause. But man, it seems like when you were coming up in the medical field, there was just so little information. And I feel for my mom and I feel for so many women that went before me and were dismissed and were going through such hard times. And it's interesting because even in my family or, extended family, I'm like, man, so many women got divorced, as they went through perimenopause and menopause. And it's like, I love your focus on oxytocin. I think that's really interesting where you just kind of flip the script and you go that direction. What are you really excited about right now in the women's wellness industry? Like what has just got you so jazzed?
Yeah, well, first, one thing based on like, the whole concept of what we as physicians, how we were trained and the understanding of it, it's like you come in with PMS symptoms and we give you an SSRI and or birth control pills for the irregular cycles. And then from there, as gynecologists, we do an endometrial ablation or a hysterectomy. And from there, what do? We refer you to a good psychiatrist and divorce attorney because that's all that was in our tool bags. But because, God put me on this journey, I really understand the underlying issues. And I think what I'm most excited of is empowering women to be in charge of their body. We've been trained as consumers to give our power away to the insurance company, to pharma, and we really look at what's the underlying issue and address those issues, then we have our power back and we enter the enchantress stage of our life. Or if we go from the maiden to the mother to the magi, I like to call it, the stage of our life, we need our cognition or wisdom and be able to use all these giftings so that when we have a legacy. And for me, I've my children, my daughters to think of and how do I want their health care to look. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation now in this space. I don't like where it's turned into a disease discussion versus a health discussion. I also really know I don't want to miss the fact that 50, 60, 70 years ago, it's a different menopause journey because we have hundreds of thousands of more chemicals that we've been exposed to in our water supply, in our air, in the chemicals, in our clothes, and our detergents, et cetera, that are really affecting our hormones.
Mm.
And so, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So addressing those issues are really important. And I think that in this space, I'm excited because, women are are claiming their voice or standing up and saying, okay, I'm not going to go down that route. I want to understand what's going on. Like, why am I experiencing this? And you always need to ask yourself. And this is what I ask my cancer patients that I see, especially my breast cancer patients. Why did you get the breast cancer? They
Mm.
often say, I don't know. So, well, let's figure it out. Because, the number one risk of breast cancer is a prior history of breast cancer. And we have to understand why we're experiencing these things, what caused it, address those issues. We look at a lifetime, what are the things that would have been like you looked at? What are these triggers that, caused you to be feeling where you are now versus let's just band-aid the symptoms.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because more women are standing up and saying, hey, this isn't okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Anna, where can we find and follow you online?
So easy to find me at dranna.com. So dranna.com. That's my website. And I'm on socials at The Girlfriend Doctor.
The girlfriend doctor. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. This was really informative, but also inspirational and motivational. And I think that is a wonderful balance that you have found in your message. So we really appreciate it and we are better off for it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye, Dr. Anna.
Bye.